Hi, this is Kurt, the Bariatric Carnivore. Well, let's talk about patient advocacy organizations and their strong ties to Big Pharma. And this may come as a shock to you because if you look at some of the tax returns of a major patient group like American Heart Association or something like that, you're going to be hard pressed to see direct payments from major pharmaceutical companies to these organizations. But what you don't realize is many of the foundations that they're receiving cash from are actually just basically shell organizations created by the pharmaceutical giants to be able to launder money through. They're pass-through organizations. They're basically AstroTurf. And what these foundations will do is they will say, hey, we'd like to give you $12 million, but in exchange we want a seat on your board of directors. So when you look at the board of directors, they've all got ties to Big Pharma. And what they're doing is they're turning these organizations that are supposed to be advocating for patients into nothing but AstroTurf organizations that do nothing but really represent the interest of Big Food, Big Pharma. And Big Pharma spends more money on these patient advocacy organizations than they do on direct lobbying. And it's not like they're slouches when it comes to funding lobbying. These are, Big Food, Big Pharma are the two biggest lobbyist groups in Washington, D.C. when you look at them as an industry. So, but the problem is all that money is highly regulated. There's disclosures. When a Big Pharma makes a PAC contribution to a congressman, there's a record. When they hire a lobbyist has to report that they are working on certain pieces of legislation and who they're meeting with. So all that information is open for public disclosure, and most of the major pharmaceutical giants really don't like that type of public disclosure on their type of stuff. So one of the ways they hide it is by using these AstroTurf organizations that are patient advocacy groups. And the cool thing about a patient advocacy group is, number one, who the people are that are out there talking about the wonders of this particular pharmaceutical. Who are they? They're the people who had great outcomes when you think about it. I mean, if you took a particular pharmaceutical for your cancer treatment and you had a bad outcome, odds are you died. And therefore, your voice isn't heard. And nobody hears from those people. Or if you had basically no result, or things just kind of changed or whatever, you're not real interested in being involved in it. The only people you're hearing from are those that had good results. And odds are, they're of a higher demographic than the average population, because it takes a certain level of confidence in order to be part of one of these citizen advocacy groups. You're not hearing from the lower income people that are having problems getting funding for this type of stuff. And you work with those guys and you're going to realize they hate Big Pharma as much as we do, even though they are dependent on those medications because they know they're being ripped off. You won't hear from those folks. No, you're only going to be hearing from the people that can really afford the medications because they had really good insurance or something like that. And they had a good outcome. And what's interesting to me about this is, hey, because you had a good outcome, was it because of the pharmaceutical? Maybe, maybe not. It may be because you have really good health care. It could be that you had a better result because you have family support and a lot of other issues. There's a lot of things that can influence an outcome. And frankly, the pharmaceutical may or may not be it, but that's what they're going to claim made the difference. And nobody questions them. That's the beauty of having patient advocates as your people out there talking about your issue, because that's your life experience. You're not a scientist. Nobody's going to question you. The press will fawningly eat up a good human interest story, but they're not going to ask real hard questions. Now, when a pharmaceutical company spokesperson or lobbyist gets up there and starts talking about it, sometimes they will ask them hard questions because they know that they're salesmen for their particular drug. But when somebody who claims to have gotten better because they took that drug, they're not going to question it. Now, why does this affect you? Well, it affects you in a couple of ways. Number one is because they have these seats in the board of directors, you will notice that none of these organizations talk about important things like lifestyle. Wonder why. Why are they only talking about pharmaceutical stuff? Why does the American Heart Association only talk about statins? Why do they not talk about low-carb diets? Well, frankly, because they really work hard because they've got the seats on the board of directors that can direct where their lobbying and advocacy stuff goes. Hang on a second. There's this lady, Tracy Brown. There's a name you ought to remember. Tracy Brown worked for the American Diabetes Association. She's a type 2 diabetic. She was tweeting that she had cured her type 2 diabetes by switching to a low-carb diet. Tracy Brown does not work for the American Diabetes Association anymore. She was kind of summarily fired. Interesting, that here was somebody that was advocating for something that kind of goes against the narrative. Here's somebody that was actually had a positive result from a lifestyle thing, and she's no longer working for him. And you kind of wonder, how often does that really happen? How many voices of patient advocates got quashed when they started talking about diet, lifestyle, and other stuff? You don't hear about that from these organizations, and it's for a reason, because the people that, the guys that pay the piper tend to call the tune. And the people that are paying the piper is big pharma, big food. And that's what you got to realize. So whenever, that's one aspect of it, that you're never going to hear about lifestyle. But number two, you're going to pay out the yazoo because of their advocacy. You will notice that none of these organizations actually work toward free market solutions to lower cost, to get these things to be made generic as quickly as possible so that there's competition in manufacturing. No. What are you going to hear these organizations all clamor for? Government funding. Force the greedy insurance companies to pay for it. Medicare funding. That type of stuff. You're not going to be seeing them advocating for lower prices, and that happens time and time again. Whenever a bill comes through, these groups may give lip service, and that they may send out a press release saying, yes, we've got to lower the cost of these very important drugs. But what's really important is getting more government funding until that happens. And they always withdraw support on crucial pieces of legislation that would create genuine competition, lowering costs. So don't expect these patient advocacy groups to suddenly become free market supporters supporting lower cost drugs. It isn't going to happen because the people that are funding it are big pharma. Behind the scenes, that's who's calling the shots. And that's a problem for you, because we've got this horrible, dysfunctional, psychopathic system that is working with complete callous disregard for you and your health. They're only pushing one solution. One pharmaceutical fits all, and they want you to pay out the nose for it because it only helps their bottom line. They are trying to get a very good return on investment for their significant investments in patient advocacy groups. So before you take a listen to them and before you start taking your cues from these major organizations like the American Diabetes Association, American Heart Association, remember who's really funding them and why. When you start to ask yourself, why aren't they advocating low-cost measures like lifestyle? Because big pharma are the people that really control those organizations. They are complete astroturf groups that are not really representing the grassroots. They are really advocating for big pharma. This is Kirk, the Bariatric Carnivore. Yeah, I know you may not have liked this message, but if you like this message, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe, join this tribe of other like-minded folks. Because remember, in this fight for your health, you are all alone in this, but we can all be alone in this together. And I try to put out a message, 2 messages a week. I will talk to you again soon.